A powerful cyclone is heading towards Mozambique and battering Madagascar, where it killed 5 people. Cyclone Freddy is expected to make landfall on Friday between central and southern Mozambique, more than 500 kilometres north of the capital, Maputo, and could eventually reach Zimbabwe. These pictures show the damage inflicted to eastern Madagascar. Roofs were torn off buildings with power cuts and flooding. Amongst the 5 killed was a 27-year-old man who drowned as part of the flooding. I'm joined now by Kat Dial, an emergency comms officer at Médecins Sans Frontières, who joins us from Noisy-Varica in eastern Madagascar. Thank you very much for joining us here on BBC World News. First off, I wonder if you could update us on the current conditions on the ground.
Yes, absolutely. So as the cyclone hit, it was a Category 5 cyclone when it was in the sea, and it did go down to a Category 3 when it hit the east coast. This caused some severe damage to houses. First assessments appear that it hasn't been as devastating as Batsarai, the cyclone last year, but it's a real concern for communities who are dealing with the combination of cyclone season with peak malaria season and lean season, where stocks are really depleted and the price of food has really reached its peak.
So how are the locals managing to survive?
So we visited some of the communities yesterday. There was one situation where a manager of a health facility had the roof of his house completely ripped off. He had to find shelter in a nearby clinic with 70 other people. So people are just finding shelter where they can. They have a real fear about how they're going to feed themselves and their families.
And of course, it is cyclone season. So in terms of mitigating further effects of storm weather, what can be done? What is being done?
Yes, so we're working in collaboration with the government crisis response. So they're coordinating all of the efforts. We're providing information to them, and we're supporting over 30 local health facilities to make sure that we can bring support where it's needed, along with other organizations. So the main things here are really to make sure that we're treating people affected by severe malnutrition, and diagnosing and treating people who are really at crisis point.
I understand also that obviously people, locals have been planting. It's time to plant your fields, and when it comes to harvesting, what are they going to have to harvest?
It's a good question. We spoke to several women before the storm hit in Ambodjian, which is just north of where I am now. And they have just planted rice crops. It takes about 3 or 4 months for this rice to mature. And they told me there's no plan B. There's no plan B if these rice fields are destroyed. Their stocks, which they were able to keep in their homes since the last cyclone hit, are now depleted. So they're really waiting to see what help is going to come, what help is going to arrive for them.
The jury's heard about testimony of you stealing client funds. Did you do that?
I did.
Did you steal or divert that Ferris fee away from the law firm?
I did.
How did you get in such a financial predicament that led you to steal money that wasn't yours?
I'm not quite sure how I let myself get where I got, but it came from, I battled that addiction for so many years. I was spending so much money on pills. I got in a spot I couldn't.
Now, what type of addiction are you referring to?
My addiction is to opiate painkillers.
And when
specifically oxycodone, OxyContin.
And when did you first become dependent or addicted to opioids?
Oxycodone or opiates in general?
Opiates in general.
I'm not quite sure of the exact date, but I can give you a time frame. I hurt my knee really bad playing football in college, and I had a knee surgery. And the medical science at the time was such that the surgery didn't work, bottom line. So it just didn't last. So within a couple of years of that, I started having a lot of knee troubles. And ultimately, I had to have a couple of surgeries, but the last surgery I had was, I think, around 2002 or 4. And I think it was around 4, so I would have started taking hydrocodone a couple of years before that. And I took hydrocodone, got addicted to that very quickly. I continued taking that for a long time. I'd force myself off of it, wean myself off of it. I'd go back to it. I battled that for a long time. And after a while, I was taking so much of that, I moved on to oxycodone. And, you know, I'm guessing that was around 2000, that transition was around 2008, 9, something like that. And of course, you know, it just escalates and escalates and escalates. And
Did you receive treatment or go to detox on occasion?
I did.
How many times?
That I went to detox or that I detoxed?
Well, let's start with going to a detox facility.
I've been to a detox facility 3 times.
When was the first time?
December of 2017.
Okay. Alec, we just heard you say, "I should have known." What are you referring to?
I said, Paul, I should have known.
What were you referring to?
I was referring to Paul got so many threats. Didn't take serious. Think twice about. So I'm just telling him, Paul, I should have known. I don't specifically remember saying that, but I can clearly hear myself say that.
Okay. What kind of threats did you understand Paul was receiving?
I mean, Paul got the most vile threats. I mean, the stuff that was on social media, I mean, it was I mean, you couldn't believe it. You couldn't believe it. It was so over the top. Truthfully, we didn't think anything about it. I mean, it was just so crazy that, you know, people talking about what he was going to get and how they were going to do this and get him. And I mean, it's stuff you really, I mean, we disregarded it because it's so over the top. Thought it's so over the top.
This fight for Vuhledar right now is one of the most important and difficult in the country. While the fight for Bakhmut is largely symbolic, this is a very strategic fight for both sides. Vuhledar is unique in that it sits at the intersection of the two main active fronts in Ukraine, the southern and the eastern front. That is why Russia wants to try to push through here to launch an offensive into Donbass. It is believed that this is one of their shaping operations, the beginning of a larger offensive to come in the next few weeks. But they are struggling very badly right now. They've lost a huge amount of men and armored vehicles as they try to cross open fields, including minefields, where the Ukrainians have been able to inflict a huge amount of damage on their troops. At the same time, the Russians are absolutely pummeling this town. You can see all around me, these are Soviet-era apartment blocks, now largely empty. The residents have fled, and almost every single one destroyed in varying degrees. All of the windows have been blown out, craters here in the ground where children used to play. Ukrainians have the benefit of the higher ground here and these buildings to use in the fighting. But as with so many of the battles here in eastern Ukraine, it is a fight of attrition. Who can hold out the longest? The Ukrainian side saying they need more ammunition to be able to keep the Russians at bay, to keep them from advancing. AlexMurdaugh, CNN, Vuhledar in eastern Ukraine.